picture at the selfie spot, but he would actually take a picture of the spot on the floor that said selfie spot instead of himself standing.
That's awesome.
Welcome to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. Here are your hosts, the radio vagabond Palle and TBEX CEO Rick Calvert.
Welcome to another edition of Travel Matters. My name is Palle and I'm still in Cape Town. And Rick, you're still in Temecula, in California, right?
That's correct, Palle.
How you been? It's been a few weeks.
I've been good, as good as we can be in the times that we're in. We can get wine here, unlike you.
I'm so jealous. We're up to 8 weeks now in lockdown and a complete alcohol ban. So I am more sober than I've ever been in my life.
Yeah, that's not the case here.
No, and we wanted to check in because we have an exciting episode ahead. And just so that you know it, Rick, at the end of this episode, I'm going to put you on the spot. No, I'm not going to put you on now, but I'm going to ask you to give your predictions about TBEX North America and TBEX Europe if it's going to happen. So I'll get back to that at the end of this episode.
Good. I think people want to hear that. And this is definitely a special episode, I would say, because we've been talking amongst ourselves about how can we help people right now. Being optimistic and keeping a good sense of humor is definitely part of it, which I think we're both good at that part. But, everyone we know, every tourist board, every creator, every brand is definitely struggling right now.
Oh, yeah.
And, when you say, how are you doing, Rick? I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good, but there's nothing happening business-wise, right?
No.
Although we're busier than ever, it's a weird thing. Everybody seems to be moving really fast, but none of us can travel anywhere right now or go out and get wine or so many other things. So I got a great email from a good friend of ours, and I'll let you do the introduction about, here's some ideas things that tourist boards in particular can do and things that creators can do too. So we thought this would be a helpful podcast.
Yeah, and if we really wanted to have this guest on because I think there are so many interesting things to that we can do in these trying times where we can't go traveling as much as we normally do.
Yeah, and it's going to be that way for a while still.
Yeah. There's they even say here in South Africa that a lot of the country, they're going from level 4, which is what we're in now, to level 3. But here in the Western Cape, that is the part of the country that's hardest hit, that we're going to stay in level 4 or maybe even go back to level 5. And it's really, really strict. So I'm in here. I'm here for the long haul, and I wonder if I'm even able to travel for TBEX. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, the thing that I'm always reminding people about, and they have to remember this, and I do this with my wife too, is that things can change so quickly. So, for example, so what they're telling you today, you could be in level 5 until October or something, and that's good advice for today. But tomorrow, the next day, next week, things could be completely different. And so another example, here in the United States, multiple states have reopened to some degree. It's not completely. I was talking to a good friend of ours, Michael Collins, in France this week, and he said his kids went back to school this week. So parts of the world are opening. And in the next couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month at the most, we're going to see the results of that. Either more people will be getting sick or they won't. And if it happens where there's not a huge spike in cases in these places that have opened up some, then again, it's going to progress much quicker. And so people who say that, we're not going to travel until next year, or kids aren't going to go back to school for all of next year, that's going to change. So you just have to remember, whatever they tell you today could change tomorrow. Could change next week.
Yeah.
Here in the States, in the next 3 weeks, we will know a lot more than we know today.
Oh yeah, we just gotta take it one day at a time and
Day by day.
Yeah, and it's now I've been in the same place for 2 months, and that is a long time for me. I just did a TEDx online talk this week, and that's why I know this, and I counted that in the last 4 years I've stayed in 314 different places, and that's an average of 4.5 days per place.
Wow!
So being 2 months in the same place, that's a long time for me. But it's I should not complain because I'm in a nice place, and I'm in a beautiful area, and I'm in Cape Town, a wonderful city. But it's I miss going out and exploring and seeing new things.
As do almost everyone in our community.
Oh yeah.
You're listening to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX.
Let's get to our guest, Leslie Walker. Rick, what can you tell me about Leslie?
So Leslie Walker is somebody that we've met a few years ago now. She's actually the person who approached us about bringing TBEX to Huntsville, Alabama. And our first reaction when they asked us is, why would we go to Huntsville? Nothing against Alabama. I've been to Alabama. I actually really like Alabama. I've been to Birmingham a couple of times, but I didn't know anything about Huntsville. And so Leslie's the one who convinced us to come take a look at the town, which we were blown away by, and which we then obviously did TBEX there. And we told our community, TBEX is going to be in Huntsville, and they had the same reaction. Why would we go there? And we told them, look, this will be amazing. We promise. And people are still talking about it today. What an incredible city and community Huntsville, Alabama is. And again, Leslie Walker's the reason we went there.
But Rick, was that actually the reason? Because in the recent times, TBEX has almost always been in not the obvious place in a country or a state, but in Billings, Montana, in Ostrava, in Catania, not in Rome. And is that the thing that was that Huntsville that brought that on to go different places?
Well, it definitely helped. Mm-hmm. So what people have to remember, TBEX has been around for 11 years now, or longer even. So we've been to major cities. The first TBEX was in Chicago. The second one was in New York City. The next one was in Vancouver. So we've been to Toronto. We've been to Stockholm. We've been to Dublin. We've been to
Manila.
Athens. So yeah, Manila. We've been to big cities all over the world. And so you have to go to other places, although we have been back to some places before, and I'm sure we will again. But also our community of travelers like you've been to 300 some odd places in the last couple of years. Most TBEX attendees have already been to Rome, and maybe multiple times, but very, very few of them have ever been to Catania. And the typical response in that case was, wow, I've never been to Catania or Sicily, and I've always wanted to go there. So we give people a reason to go to a place that's kind of on their list. Again, Ostrava is a place where, you've been to Prague, but you've never seen any other part of the Czech Republic.
Oh, exactly.
And the thing that we learned when we went there was the entire country. Prague is the big city, but there are dozens of cities that are just like Prague, smaller, with a lot less tourists, that are just storybook, fantasy novel, beautiful.
Exactly.
And so that's why we like to go to those places.
Yeah. And also when I meet people that say that they've been to Denmark, 90% say they only went to Copenhagen. And there's Copenhagen's wonderful, but there's so much nice places in my home country. So yeah. I can hear Leslie now. Hi, Leslie.
Hello there.
So good to have you on. What's it like hearing us talking about Huntsville?
I got a little bit of the goosebumps there for a minute. I will tell you, though, Rick listing off all of those major cities that TBEX has been to in the past, that was kind of a funny motivator for me. When I reached out to them about coming to Huntsville, I sort of joked with them and said, you're going to Stockholm and Manila, and you've been to all of these big cities. So Huntsville is the natural choice, right?
So we should also say Leslie's been doing this for over 2 decades. She's worked on the hotel side. She's worked on the DMO side. She's done nonprofit stuff. And she now has her own company called Tourism Worx, where it's an agency where she's helping DMOs and other travel brands work with creators in part. So she's been doing this for a very, very long time. And I can also tell you she's one of the best that we've ever worked with at TBEX, and we've worked with a lot of folks. So
that's very kind of you, Rick, although the extra very wasn't necessary. That makes me sound like I've been doing this far too long.
She started in high school.
Yes.
Leslie, we wanted to have you on to talk about what content creators, DMOs, and travel brands can do in these times where people aren't traveling.
Yeah. So, as Rick said, I had all of this time at home, right? In the peace and quiet to think about what's next for us, and simultaneously watching so many of my friends through social media and through, personal contact go through so much. So many people I've worked in the industry with for decades, and see people who I know as the face of a brand all of a sudden not have a home at that brand anymore. And though it's very common for cities and destinations and DMOs to have a crisis communications plan, right? When you go through something like a natural disaster or, something that happens in your community, a wildfire, for instance, in somewhere like California. But I don't know that there were crisis communication plans in place for pandemic. As a matter of fact, many of the people I've spoken to in destinations out and out said, we didn't have a communication plan for this. And just simply saying, don't come, is a short-term solution, but certainly not one that is going to have our friends back working as soon as possible. And all of us as the world back traveling as soon as possible, as soon as it's safe. And I started thinking about what would a crisis communication plan look like in this situation? How would everyone uses the word pivot these days, but how would you change the way you're talking to not only the traveler at large and potential meeting planners, but your locals? What does it look like to have travel back? And if you can't have travel back, what can you do in the meantime? And it sort of spurred these ideas of making sure our content creator friends are able to work and our destinations have great content in this time when they're sort of in a panic mode. And how do they do that together so that it's mutually beneficial? And so I reached out to the people I know who speak to our content creators, with me as the destination background and TBEX working so well with our content creators and destinations. I was like, these are the people to get that message out, and hence the email.
So Leslie, one of the things you said, I'd seen this from so many DMOs, and I just was looking at a bunch of DMO websites yesterday, and several of them had this message, don't visit us right now. And okay, that's the first thing you can say when we were all shook by this incredible worldwide disaster. But that happened 2 months ago to most of us. And what are we doing now? And there's so much more than we can be doing now. And so Leslie and I went back and forth real quick. She had a list of points, and we talked through real quick. And we've got about 15 things suggestions we can make that DMOs and creators can do. So obviously, as you said, think of this like a crisis communication plan. Be transparent, be open, share what you're thinking, and get feedback from the community. And that's kind of the starting point, right, Leslie?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the feedback from the community, I think, is huge because, as you said, we all sort of stopped in our tracks, right? And I think many folks waited to see what someone else would do before they started coming up with what they would do. Everyone was looking for the first voice to come out and say, what do we do? Do we talk about virtual tours, or do we talk about what it will look like in the future? Is it just a stay strong message? And I think a lot of people froze and said, what do I do, and watched for someone to be the thought leader and to step out. And you and I, as we spoke, that said, how do we be more proactive? How do we think about what's beyond the pat messages that everyone is putting out there? How do you make people more deeply engaged with your destination?
And one way to get people engaged is, I guess, to give people something to look forward to, right?
Yeah. And I know Rick and I, this was kind of our takeaway. Like, that's the business we're in, right? Is to give people something to look forward to. That's what travel has always been about. That circle on your calendar to when you get to go next. And that's what content creators and destinations do, is feed those dreams and those ideas, and that's something to work toward. And right now, the whole world needs that perhaps more than ever, is what's next? What's the thing to look forward to? And that's just the business that we're in, all of us, right? Destinations and content creators. So we have to think about what that is, what that dream is, what that hope is, and what they need to look forward to get everyone through this time.
Absolutely. Again, that just optimism in general and reassuring people that things will get better and we will be able to travel again, and knowing that, whoever your particular community is, if you're a creator or a destination or a brand, your community is a community of travelers. They want to go somewhere. They want to see new things, and it is what they dream about and hope about. And so help them foster those dreams and foster those future plans. No, even if we're unsure when we can go, we can still dream about going there when things are better.
I've seen data that suggests that even though we aren't traveling right now, that people are still researching. As a matter of fact, probably more than they have in a long time. They're planning far, far out. And we need to make sure there's messaging out there for those planners that are looking right now for next summer or in the winter or next fall. Make sure there's content out there for them to find, because though they're not traveling, they are planning.
Well, I know from the creator side, Leslie, in all the blogger groups, everybody's traffic plummeted when this started. And your point is a really good one. I think it's a good time to check in with them again and ask them if their traffic is starting to go back up, because no doubt Palle wants to go out and get wine. My wife wants to go out and see her friends. My kids want to go out and play with their friends. I want to go hiking. All of us want to get out. And I bet you that traffic is starting to go up again, where people are starting to think about the future right now.
Which means that content that you might not be putting out right now, like you might not be putting out Christmas holiday travel, and you might not be putting out spring travel for destinations that are particularly in bloom in spring, but maybe you should consider it. Look at where the interest is and the traffic is, and start thinking further out as far as your content calendar.
Yeah. And anything in the semi-near future, so we're going to talk about TBEX in October before we get done here. All of those plans have to be tentative right now, because we just don't know. But we should, as in so many things, plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Yes.
And so if things don't happen the way you want, you have a plan B in place. But also think about if everything was working the way you wanted it to, and everything was safe and you can afford it and all of those things, where would you be going? How would you be doing it? So it's okay to make those plans. It's okay. And so anyway, I think all of us as creators, as DMOs, we have that responsibility to give people something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
So a part of your crisis communication plan was check in with your stakeholders. If a destination has talking points, crisis communications, directives have changed, make sure that information is passed from the brand to your creator partners. Or if you're updating, or if this is a perfect time for a creator to touch base with past destinations, this is on the creator side, and ask, is there any information you'd like for me to change about this piece we created together? Or better yet, acknowledge they may have been changing how they market their city, and that you're there to help them rewrite the story, and when they're ready, to get it out there. And then you've also got a point is to kind of inventory the content you already have on the destination side and see, what do you have to help get you through this time?
So I think this is a time to hold each other up, to prop each other up. I mean, if you look on the destination side. Your overarching agency is the DMO or the CVB or whoever the marketing agency for the community is. They are the ones through the city's direction and in some cases emergency management of a destination who are leading the discussion about what tourism and travel looks like and what the directive is from health officials and the leaders of the community. That needs to trickle down to your attractions and to your hoteliers, many of whom are bare bones staff right now. I have friends in the hotel business that the general managers are working the front desk, and their staff has been cut 80%, and so they don't have time to have messaging from their hotel, but it needs to trickle down from somewhere so that they are getting that messaging out. So whether it's a DMO leading that charge, and then also those DMOs reaching out to those content creators who, through their relationships in the past, has already assigned those, has deputized those content creators to be your voice as a community. Now is the time for you guys to prop each other up and communicate both directions. DMOs reach out to your content creators and tell them this particular attraction is closed until X date, or this restaurant that you highlighted is currently closed and they're struggling. Can you put in a link to help your readers potentially buy gift cards to help them get through this time so that when you can highlight in your articles that say when things are back to normal, make sure you don't miss out on this restaurant and keep them in business now by pre-buying a gift card. Like, what can you do to make sure that your readers can have the same experience you did as a content creator? How do you prop up those places that you highlighted? And that's going to earn both traffic, I would hope, and goodwill with potential content creation for that same destination in the future. So I think helping each other in both directions of communicating what is happening in a particular destination and how to promote it and help it in the now is huge.
And also you're talking about developing the team, because a lot of people, they are joining the unemployment line right now, but you're saying that it's a good time to actually get ready and develop the team right now?
Yeah, so now's the time to look at your dream team. Make sure that you're looking ahead to who you want back on your team, who you'd like to add to your team, and how do you create stopgap measures? Because as things ramp back up, the demand for refilling those teams that we have been decimated during this time, the competition is going to be stiff. I mean, from the line level perspective, even of hotels and restaurants, you're going to be fighting for staff, and DMOs will be the same way. And so then what's going to happen, I worry, if I had my crystal ball, like Rick says, is that when you get ready to assemble a team, there will be, depending on how long you wait, there may or may not be the folks you'd like to have available to you. And you're already behind.
By the way, there is some amazing talent out there right now that are out of a job.
Yes.
And so if you're a DMO or hotel or travel brand of some point, and you've been looking for that killer employee, they're out there right now. And you should go get them before your competition does. There are people who are just monster marketers, PR people, sales people that can help your DMO right now. And for the moment when things come back or start to come back, you should be recruiting those people right now.
Well, and you should be, because you need to be thinking about your messaging right now. What is it going to look like in the future? And what are your plans A, B, and C on that messaging? And so if you're not thinking about that now, you're already behind, because things starting to open up and then developing your plan, you're going to be behind already on getting your messaging out on what that's going to look like. So we also talked about, if you can't hire immediately those superstars that, like you said, are out there and available right now, fill that gap of your content needing updating, your photos needing updating, your video content needing updating. Fill that with some of your content creators, so that if you're not ready to add a payroll right now, do some contract work.
I want to step back one step before we go forward again, because these are all kind of tying into each other, of course, as we knew they would. You said one of your points was, think about how you can help your local businesses right now. And this is primarily for the DMO side, because, their main job is heads on beds, bringing new people to the destination, driving new business. But we all want to plan for the future, but you mentioned gift cards, and creators can do this too. Think about the one magic place and the destination that you went to, like you said, your favorite restaurant, your favorite bar or attraction, museum, whatever it is, and give them some love right now on how you can help them get through this so they're still there when this is over, whether it's buying gift cards or making a reservation far into the future or something. Talk about, just raise awareness of the situation that they're in right now. And I don't know if you have any other suggestions on what a DMO in particular can do to help those local businesses right now and get them through so they're still around when we do return to normal.
Well, you and I both know it's not just about businesses, it's about culture, right? It's about your local culture. And one of the things that I've seen recommended that I have written about to recommend is your local musicians and local artists. Like so many musicians have switched into doing virtual concerts. Throw a buck here or two in their tip jar so that when live music comes back, those musicians are still in the business of making your destination special, right? Do your virtual tours and put out guides to information about your city or little known facts that people may not have known, so that when folks are ready to be out and about again, they've now developed a relationship where they want to see something in person that they've enjoyed so much virtually. I think there's a lot of ways that you can highlight parts of your community without folks having to have boots on the ground right in this moment.
Your point about musicians is an excellent one. You have a great community of musicians in Huntsville. We have a great community of musicians here in Temecula. And they are doing, like you said, virtual tours or virtual open mic, where multiple musicians. There are probably in the town that I live in, Temecula, there are probably 500 people who make a living playing music at the local wineries and bars around here, and those people are all out of a job right now. So they are doing these incredible Facebook Live concerts, right? When like an open mic and switching from one musician to the next. And your suggestion about a virtual tip jar, that's a really, really great suggestion, Leslie. And I know that could be duplicated in other ways as well with artists. Again, in Huntsville, you have that incredible art community at Low Mill. How do you support those businesses in this time when, like you said, you can't have boots on the ground? You can't physically go see them. What can you do to support them?
Well, a lot of our artists have done the same thing musicians have, where they've done online art shows and then done porch pickup for artwork and that sort of thing. It was interesting. My children told me, my grown children told me that they had done a lot of buying lunches for nurses through Venmo or tipping artists through Venmo. And both of them actually received a Venmo from the company for $20 to pay it forward because they had seen that they were repeatedly doing those type of actions and they were sent a reward. I don't know if anyone else has heard of that, but that happened to my kids so that they could pay it forward to someone else.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So your next thing was talking about, and this is again a very good point. The last few years, we've all been very busy. I know a lot of destinations until this happened, they were on pace to have their busiest year ever. And the thing that has really been the hottest topic until the pandemic changed the world was over-tourism. That's been the case in places like Barcelona for a long time. In Amsterdam, it's definitely an issue. They actually had just let go of their entire tourism team in the Netherlands because they don't want to bring more tourists in a place which already has too many tourists. That has changed overnight. And so we've been so busy that you haven't had time to really stop and think about, does your message still make sense? And even more so, does it make sense in the world that we're in today? So maybe you could talk about what people can do strategically to think about what's their message going to be as things return to normal.
Sure. No, I completely I love that thought because we have been so busy. We've been turning away business, right? We've been so busy. We didn't need it. And so we haven't really been focusing on our brands. Like what is our brand story now that we need it, right? We need it to market who we are. So I think it's an excellent time now that things have slowed down and you have a moment to focus on who you are, who you were, and let's face it, who you're going to be. Something so simple as thinking about your branding, right? Does your branding still make sense? If your tagline in this current world is bringing people closer together, you might need to think about your branding. If your images on your website and your Facebook are all people at festivals crammed together, or, someone's hand holding a loaf of bread to pass out from a local restaurant or a plate and it's not gloved. I'm not saying we have to switch completely. I'm just saying in the short term, you should probably be sensitive to the messaging that you're putting out there as you have time to now that you have time to slow down and really think about your brand. Does it still make sense to who you are? Because now you can look at it both through the lens of what we've been through, but also you may have needed a refresh before any of this began and you just didn't have the time to look at it.
Yeah, and we see things differently now. I just saw a movie the other day where I reacted when people were shaking hands and thought, what are you doing? You can't shake hands.
I did the same thing.
And I guess that once all of this is over, it's going to be a different world that we wake up to.
You guys think so, really?
I'm not saying that we're not going to shake hand or give a hug, but it's going to be different.
Yeah.
I hear the hesitation in your voice, Rick, and it may not. We may go back to completely normal, but right now, I think you have to be sensitive to that visceral reaction that both Palle and I had, and I know that's not the across the board reality for everyone. Some folks, are all over the spectrum, which I know we were going to talk about as far as how they feel about where we are.
Yes,
but I certainly think it's worth looking at with a critical eye. And saying,
oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you guys right now for sure. I wouldn't offer to shake hands with anybody right now. But honestly, one of the reasons I travel is to meet people and to have that personal connection with people. And I can't imagine not shaking people's hands or giving them a bro hug or something like that. I don't want to live in that future. And, but I know in the immediate future, absolutely wearing a mask and all that sort of thing. Something that, again, our friend Michael Collins said to me this week was that he predicts that people will just be wearing masks as they travel just as a normal thing. And, that has been fairly normal in Asia for a long time now. And that is a result of past pandemics that hit Asia harder. SARS in particular and a couple others as well. But he thinks that it's just going to become a cultural thing where people are wearing masks in airports a lot long after this is over. And he could be right about that.
I miss the old days.
I was going to say that perhaps I'm more sensitive to it in some ways, just from a philosophical standpoint. I spent my entire youth, if you will, working in hotels and at the front desk of hotels. And the intimacy that comes with being with people at their in some cases, they're most vulnerable. They're in strange surroundings, oftentimes by themselves. They're traveling without family. They're uncomfortable in their space. They don't know where to eat. They don't know where to put gas in their car, right? They're in some cases very vulnerable just from a psyche standpoint, right? And so I always found it to be my job as the host in a hotel or in a destination to put people at ease, whatever that at ease looks like. And so I guess that's the approach that I'm taking.
Welcome the stranger in a strange land.
Exactly.
Before the next one, because I know how you get about these things, Rick, are you ready for our brand new jingle?
Okay.
And now it's time for Rick's Rant.
Ooh, Rick's Rant.
Okay, Rick, go ahead.
So this next point is a big one for me. that you mentioned about hiring creators for hire creators today for content in the future. Hire local bloggers who can document things in your city now, use them for video, photography, copywriting, audio. And it's the hire local bloggers point that I went back and made all caps if you guys are looking at your notes. Because, okay, somebody wants to hire Palle to do some work, but he's in South Africa right now and he can't go to, Denmark or Huntsville or, anywhere. He's stuck there. So who can you hire right now? You can hire local bloggers who live there, and they could actually be, depending on the restrictions, an essential worker for you, doing that work and getting content that they may never get again in our lifetime because people aren't out the way that they normally are. This is a thing that every DMO should be doing already. And I'm sorry, you guys, I'm going to rant a little bit on this one, but this is your chance. All of you DMOs out there, please, please, please take this chance, this opportunity once in your lifetime, and hire these amazing local bloggers that live in your town. And why brands don't do that already is just astounding. It's called the World Wide Web. The fact that the blogger lives in Huntsville doesn't mean people in New Orleans or people who live in the Philippines or people who live in Australia don't read their blog. If it's great content, people will find it. And why would you not partner with someone who is an expert at your destination, who tells your story better than anyone else could? And that's why we have a keynote at TBEX in Lafayette. Brandy Evans from the Shreveport Tourism Board, and Jada Durden, a blogger, a local blogger. These two ladies have an amazing relationship. They've, through their work relationship, they've become truly great friends. And it's so obvious when you meet them that they're friends. And then to see them speak together, you can see that they have this genuine love for each other. And then when Jada's telling the story of her town, her love for that town comes through in a way that it can't from anybody else. And the way that they work together, it's just an amazing, beautiful relationship. And I'll tell you, and it's effective. Just think about it from the pure business side. It works. It brings people to the town. It puts heads on beds. And I'll give you the totally opposite example, and I won't say the guy's name to protect him, because maybe someday his DMO will wake up and hire him. They actually have stolen his content. Ugh. The DMO. And this guy is one of the best bloggers in the country. One of the best. He spoke at TBEX several times. And he's approached the DMO to say, hey, why don't you guys hire me? I've got some ideas. He's pitched them really good ideas. And, they fly people in from all over the world to write about this destination, but never once have hired him to do anything. And even further, stole his content, used his photos, and he's had to send them takedown notices or say, pay me. Why would you not do that as a DMO?
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah, that is shocking.
And now, again, now's the time. Better than ever. You now have the excuse. Maybe your boss is the dumb one, right? Who insists that you have to hire a blogger from Germany to get Germans to come to your destination. Maybe now's the chance you say, hey, look, we can't bring in Rockstar Blogger from Germany, but actually Rockstar Blogger lives right here. Let's hire him just because we have no other choice. And maybe you'll learn a very valuable lesson you could take forward in the future. So after that rant, Leslie.
There was a question at the end.
I was just cheering you on.
I'll let you take it from the DMO perspective. Why should a DMO do what I just, browbeat them into doing?
No, I could not agree with you more. And you left off a very valuable point. Right now, they can also react to changes in your destination faster than anyone for new content because they're there. So you don't have to hunt down someone and change content from 2 years ago. You can create what is the immediate now because they're there.
It obviously costs less. You don't have to fly them in. You don't have to put them up.
Well, and like you said, who knows your destination better? They live there. They have their own passions. And to me, that's some of the best content when someone has a favorite place that's legitimately their favorite place to have coffee or have lunch or to have a picnic or whatever. It's so much more engaging content because they mean it. They've lived it. They have a connection to it, a personal connection. Yeah, I am with you. The local content creators should be such a back pocket secret weapon that you leverage whenever you have any kind of a restaurant week or a new festival or anything that you need to create new content around that's diverse to diverse audiences. Use those local content creators. They are your best friends.
And coming from Denmark, I've never done a single travel podcast or a blog post from my home country, but I would enjoy doing it. And I love my country, and I could really bring the passion out and share the stories of that. So any Danish DMOs listening, you know where to find me.
and by the way, there's definitely value in bringing someone from outside your destination to give you their perspective. Because again, we all travel, and what's one of those amazing things when you go to a place and it completely changes your expectations of the place when you get there and you're just surprised. Or as I use an example in Ireland and Dublin, it completely confirmed, and Hawaii was the same way for me, confirmed everything I ever dreamed and thought about the place. It was exactly that way when I got there. And it was like, oh, this is the dream place I thought it would be. And so yes, there is value to bringing someone from outside your destination. But your last point, Leslie, about, making strangers feel welcome in your place, who can do that better than a local blogger?
It's the truth. We're just speaking all the truth here.
You're listening to Travel Matters, sharing all the latest news, trends, and tips for you, and interviewing the movers and shakers in the travel creative ecosystem.
You're listening to Travel Matters, and on our show today we have Leslie Walker, a community engagement manager from Huntsville, Alabama. So let's talk about what else you have on the list of things to do in these times where we're not traveling so much. You suggested doing virtual video tours of a destination. Can you tell us more about that?
So many, a lot of folks have transitioned to that. We've seen great museums around the world share beautiful video tours. It's kind of what they've shifted into so that folks can still see their destination, and gorgeous gardens, botanical gardens sharing virtual tours. Mm-hmm. As we all know, and we talk about oftentimes at TBEX, a lot of folks are a one-man show when it comes to attractions or destinations. It's a very small group, and so you may not have a video in your back pocket or have the dollars to create a huge production. But if you have content creators who are excellent at video, you certainly got product to put out there if you use those folks to create content for you. And once again, like Rick said, during this time when you don't necessarily have folks traveling, use those video content creators that you may have locally to help you have some sort of product out there speaking to the world.
Yep. You mentioned, this is a golden opportunity to set yourself apart from other destinations. Evaluate if your message is still relevant and when you developed it. I think we touched on that a little bit. The next point, again, I think is so important. And I think you'll see that I was following this point in my rant about hiring local bloggers. You definitely have to talk about safety. You have to have this balance, but you've got to avoid hackneyed tropes. You can't just, make these disingenuine comments. You have to be human, have real, compassionate honesty. And that needs to come from every brand, especially tourism brands right now.
Yeah, it's like we were saying earlier about making folks feel welcome truly and honestly, and meeting them where they are, because we all know that everyone's experience around this has been different right now. It's like anything. We have people who think we've gone to far, people who think we haven't gone far enough, and who knows where the truth lies, somewhere in the middle. And so you have to talk honestly about where you are in your personal experience without alienating or isolating folks who are all really don't have their footing right now. And so to put out, a cookie cutter message that everyone is putting out just doesn't resonate, right? You just scroll past it because you've heard it 1,000 times from 1,000 brands. And what better time than now to be genuine and honest about, we don't know where this is going, or we are shocked as you are, and we hate it as much as you do. We miss you as much as you miss us, but we also know that we want to protect you as our visitors and ourselves. But the hackneyed tropes, I know folks they just have become white noise at this point. But you're right. You do have to talk about safety, but you don't want to be fear-mongering, but you don't want to disregard it. It's a very delicate balance. And the only way that you can walk that tightrope is just to be yourself and honest as a destination about what you're feeling and how you're trying to prepare and how you're trying to honor everyone's feelings around travel.
Yep. It totally ties into your next point, is that because you have fewer customers, you should give the customers you do have more attention, that they don't want to be glossed over. So you have a chance now to be human with people. Going back to, you're not as busy, you've got fewer people. You can really give people attention right now who need your attention, who have real questions for you.
Well, and talking, not only that, because let's face it, you should have been doing that anyway. That's the way to win loyal advocates to your destination, whether it's large groups of people or the single traveler, like everyone who's delivering excellent customer service and care. That should have been our goal anyway. But now it's even more important because those are your warriors, those people who care enough or through whatever circumstances have to be with you. And, I've read statistics also that say if someone is a hero to you in a time of crisis, whatever that crisis is, you'll be loyal to them forever. And I know when I have been through events in my own city, whether it was natural disasters or whatever, the businesses that I felt there for me and understood me and made me feel a sense of normal and cared for, I will drive 20 miles out of my way to frequent them because they were there for me when I needed them. And I think that's where we have to be as industry professionals.
What about the locals that maybe we spoke about Amsterdam before, and I have a friend who works in the downtown Amsterdam. He says it's so different now. What about the locals? If they're worried about opening up to having these tons of tourists coming in again, that they would bring the disease back, and we would have a new spike in the disease in the virus. How should we treat the locals?
How does a tourist board manage that one, Leslie?
Well, if I knew that, I would no. I mean, I would make $1 million, right? But I never, if I'm being honest, as a tourism industry professional whose my entire job has been come. Everyone come to my city. It's fabulous. You should all be here. It never occurred to me until this. And starting to speak with so many of my industry colleagues that would be a communication that you would have to manage to convince your locals why having tourists here was okay because they weren't going to bring the disease with them. I mean, I guess the destinations who've had to deal with over tourism in a way and the disease of people and their impact on the community have a preparedness way of thinking about that to their locals, how to market tourism. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a delicate balance. And I may not have all the answers for how you should do that, but I definitely wanted to make sure people thought about it because as like I said, a lifelong industry professional, it never occurred to me until the last few weeks of listening to my colleagues out there.
I mean, I guess destinations can have messaging at the airports, at other kind of public gathering places for people to practice safe social distancing and other habits, to avoid, spreading this or any other contagion, and letting your locals know that you're reinforcing those safety habits, and that seems like something that they can do, and maybe even, again, talking to those local businesses, because again, your local hotels, restaurants, attractions, they want those people to come still too. But they're not the only businesses affected when tourists come. So letting the community know that, yeah, you are taking measures to protect them when tourists do return.
Well, and help your hoteliers. Help your hoteliers implement those practices. The American Hotel and Lodging Association sent down some directives. But once again, if you're dealing with a skeleton crew at a hotel, you may or may not have time to create your signage and put down your tape marks and do all of that. And maybe that's where the DMO also can step in and not only help the hotels and other public tourism type locations walk through those steps of cleanliness measures and prevention measures, but also tout how they're doing it on their channels.
Which ties into your next point as well, as reassuring people, because people do need that reassurance.
Yeah, like I said, just to make sure that you're following all of the guidelines in your current community, and making sure you're sharing the messaging that you're doing that. I think a lot of people are doing that, but I think that if you get ahead of it and start thinking of ways to do business differently and tout that as well. I have a local shop here that I visited early on before we were, actually those places were shut down, and they had gone through extreme measures that I would never even have thought of, as far as allowing styluses for signing of your receipts, and there was a clean cup and a dirty cup, or they washed their hands between taking your order, entering your order, presenting your order, and they rang a bell every time they did it, with their elbow, so that you knew that they washed their hands 4 times during your transaction. And this is before anything had really tightened up. And so thinking creatively about all of the ways people come in contact with your brand, are there now throwaway headsets for, audio tours in your museum? Like, think about all those touch points and getting ahead of it a little bit and communicating so that people know you're thinking about it, even if you haven't accomplished everything that might be a perfect transaction. People being reassured that you're considering those and really trying to pick your brain about how to make things better. I think that's reassuring all on its own.
Are you talking about we have to think about a balance, be optimistic but real at the same time?
Oh, I think that's true, and I know it's true for me as an individual. And in so many ways, as tourism professionals, we're responsible. It's like we all have a family of thousands, right, that we carry with us, and we're protecting all of that family. So, you want to be, I guess Rick said it best, you want to be cautiously optimistic, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
And also be prepared for people who think you're not being cautious enough or being too cautious. We definitely saw this with TBEX in Catania. There were heated discussions in the Facebook group about people saying, oh, you have to cancel this event right now. And other people saying, oh, you're crazy if you cancel this event. There's nothing wrong. And, the truth really was in the middle. And we tried to keep that balance and eventually make that decision when it was obvious it was the right one. But to try and see both points of view of people who want to be more cautious and people who don't want to be. You have to strike that balance.
I do want to say, I know there was a point we've talked about several times in all of your communications, being honest and being human. And I think that's true when you're going back and forth between communicating the seriousness of the situation, but also your preparedness, but also your optimism and all the things we're trying to communicate right now. I know one of the favorite accounts, or one that's done exceedingly well during this time, is the National Cowboy Museum in Oklahoma City, right? Are you guys both familiar?
I am not with what they've done in this in particular. No.
Okay, so when the shutdown came, and they've been super successful, they've now, gained several 100,000 social media followers. Whether this was planned or unplanned, when the lockdown came, they put a security guard in charge of their social media accounts, Tim, the Cowboy. And everything that he tweeted out was, formatted wrong, and he spelled out the word hashtag.
Awesome.
And it was just him roaming around the museum, right? Picture at the selfie spot, but he would actually take a picture of the spot on the floor that said selfie spot instead of himself standing there.
That's awesome.
But what about that human communication, I think, resonated.
So he's learning social media on the job.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But I think what resonated with people, right, is this fish out of water story. This I don't know what I'm doing. I'm adapting to this quote unquote new normal, the hackneyed trope. I'm doing other duties as assigned. I don't know what I'm doing, but he crowdsourced and asked for help with Twitter pointers. So he engaged the community. But I think everyone feels so uneasy and out of sorts right now that Tim, the security guard, just resonated with people because they're like, I feel that. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, where I'm going. I've never done this before. And yes, it was funny on the surface, but I think the honesty and the kind of mutual feeling of uncertainty and being lost just really spoke to people. So when you're going through all of these motions, think about being who you are and being honest, because I think this time alone in isolation has really brought people to a space of being really in tune with the stuff that matters and the stuff that doesn't, and the stuff that's genuine and the things that aren't.
Well, I know what I'm doing after the podcast. I'm going to go check out Tim the Cowboy tweets from the National Cowboy Museum.
National Cowboy Museum.
Yeah. Are you sure it was not an act that was he playing dumb, or was he really not knowing what he was doing?
If it was an act and the social media team at Cowboy Museum really thought all of this through and constructed this entire thing, then they're geniuses and they're not being paid enough.
They're so evil geniuses, I would say.
Yeah, we have to put a link in the show notes once we found that. So,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so our last point, we'll wrap this up, Leslie, was developing a plan B and a plan C in case things aren't going well, which seems like really good advice right now. Again, hoping for the best, planning for the worst.
Yeah, so even in my nonprofit work that I've been working on, we've had to transition and go left and then full stop and go right. And I think it's worth thinking about what do things look like if this lasts another 3 months and we're back to business, another 6 months, another 18 months. How can we transition our messaging, whether it's local and regional, which a lot of people are going to? What are the different phases depending on where the world is at any given time? And even if we have to end up going to telework for the foreseeable future, what does that look like within just your processes and procedures within an agency? What do you need to be in the office for? What do you not? I think it's a really good time to sort of look at what has worked, what hasn't worked internally, and then start thinking about communicating externally for as many instances or variations of the future as you can conceive.
It was really, really good advice, I think, for creators and DMOs. And I really appreciate you thinking of us to send us that email, Leslie, and help us kind of get this news out to people that hopefully can be helpful to them. And as we always say, I hope that you stay safe and stay well there in Huntsville. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon in the near future, whatever city that may be. Maybe now you can make it to Catania when that happens, because I know you were supposed to be on a cruise and couldn't, or you had a work thing and you couldn't come this time when we originally had it scheduled.
I would love that. I adore my colleagues in the tourism industry on all sides of the equation, and my heart hurts for them. But you know what? I sat with myself and said, my heart hurting for them is not enough, and anything we can do to help our community, as I am here to do any way that I can.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you again, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing travel matters with your friends and followers on social media. You're the best.
So, Rick, we have a website, tbexcon.com, where it says that TBEX North America in Lafayette will take place in early October. How sure are you of that?
It's a very good question. So going back to what we said, earlier in this conversation, is all plans have to be tentative right now. We've told people this in earlier podcasts and in emails, and we try to update people in the group. If you were ask me right now, which you just did, I'd say the chances are 70-30 in favor. So I'm 70% sure that this will happen in October, that travel restrictions will be lifted mostly, and that things will be safe to travel at that time. But also, in the next 3 weeks, the next month is a really critical time, and I may have a different answer for you at the end of that time. Again, things are reopening here. And things are reopening in other parts of the world. If we don't see a big spike in cases in the next month, then I'll be pretty confident that the event will happen in October. If we do see spikes, then I'll reevaluate and we'll most likely reschedule. And we're very fortunate that our friends in Lafayette are very flexible. They're planning the same. We're in complete agreement. For now, we're planning for it to still happen, but we know that it may not. That's where we're at today. And I would also say Catania, we have tentatively now scheduled to reschedule it in November, the second week of November.
Yeah, that's what you said the last time we spoke.
Yep. But I would say the odds there are probably 50-50, maybe even a little less. Because local travel will start sooner, international travel will start later. So again, in the next month we'll know a lot more, because Italy is planning to reopen. There were some stories out there about Italy not allowing tourists until next year. And I got an email from the ENIT, the Italian National Tourist Board, saying that's not true. We'll definitely be open before the end of the year. And we definitely want tourists to return. So that is what they are planning on. But we'll see soon.
But once you say that, Rick, that international travel might be coming later, would that affect someone like me who's not an American?
It might.
To go into the U.S.
It might. And it goes to Leslie's point earlier about reassuring locals who are afraid of people bringing COVID-19 with them from wherever they're from, whether it's, New York City to Lafayette, or from South America to Catania, or South Africa to Catania. Where we're at today in the world, countries are going to be restricting travel. Like I heard in Australia, they're not letting people leave, right? And in other countries, they're not going to let people in from select countries. And every country will make those decisions on their own. There are definitely countries that are making decisions to not allow certain countries to travel there and allowing others. So yeah, it could affect you. I don't know yet. I don't know.
No.
We'll find out and I'm sure that that'll be based on local circumstances. If cases in South Africa are very low and cases in the U.S. are very low, then I'm guessing travel between the two countries will be open.
Yeah, that's kind of what they're talking about in Europe. The European Union, they were talking about opening, that countries that have similar counts can visit each other, and that makes sense, really.
Yeah, and so again, the next month, this could be a completely different conversation. We could be saying, wow, can we believe that this looks like it's over and things are getting better and things are returning to normal or the new normal or whatever? but things are improving, right? We could either be saying that, or we could be saying, wow, we've got these resurgence of cases and looks like we're all going to be stuck. I don't think lockdown is going to last anywhere for much longer. I don't think that it can. I mean, you just can't. People can't afford to pay their rent, to pay their mortgage, to buy food, to live in lockdown. That just is not sustainable. So, but there may be people are going back to work but not traveling with safety measures and those type of things. But again, in the next month, one of those two things will happen. Things will be improving or they won't. Yeah.
And with a little luck, we can have a glass of wine when we're doing this podcast.
Absolutely, I'm optimistic. I'm absolutely optimistic that will happen.
But the only thing we do this at nighttime for me, but in the early morning for you. So I hope you're okay with that.
I'm not above the day drinking, Palle, especially on a weekend like this.
It's 12 o'clock somewhere in the world.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rick. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Palle, again for helping us produce this thing, being our co-host, and especially when you're in such strenuous circumstances, trapped in paradise with no wine. I really, really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This episode of Travel Matters was hosted by TBEX CEO Rick Calvert and Radio Vagabond Palle and produced by radioguru.co.uk.